Good evening, Rabbi. I want to talk tonight about the issue of praying with a Minyan. Right? Where does this come from? This obligation to pray with a Minyan, this mitzvah to go to Minyan. Who's obligated? What's obligated? What's the obligation? How is it done? Whatever, all these things. So number one, right? A person, you probably know that Jews are obligated to pray. There's an obligation. One of the mitzvot of the Torah is to pray. You know. Yeah, sure. So.
Aside from studying.
Yeah, right. Torah study is one mitzvah. That's considered to be the main mitzvah altogether, which overrides everything, right? Now that's considered to be the main concept of Judaism. But there's also a mitzvah of prayers. How many times is a person obligated to pray? A day? 3 times a day is obligated to pray, right? What does that mean? Shachrit, Mincha, and Arvit, right? As the sages teaches us, that these prayers were instituted by our patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? They say Abraham instituted the morning prayer, Shachrit. Yitzchak instituted the Mincha, the afternoon prayer. The night prayer was instituted by Yaakov Avinu, right? We find this also in the Psukim, by the way, in the verses, right? There are verses which prove this. So, and also there's a spiritual quality that's involved over here. Why dafka, right? Why precisely is it Abraham that instituted the morning prayer? Because in the morning, right, as the Chazal tell us, it's a time of chesed, it's a time of kindness, divine kindness in the world in the morning, you know? That's why, by the way, a person shouldn't be sleeping in the morning, you know, like sleep through the morning, you know, the sleepy guy. It's not good to be like that. You know why? Because you're missing the best part of the day, which is the morning, which is the chesed, the kindness is in the morning. It's because, by the way, there's kindness in the world in the morning. It's also a very productive time, you know, to get things done. You know what I mean? Once you miss the morning, now you're getting into more like difficult territory. You know, more. You have to work harder to get things done. In the morning, things go much easier, much better, much more. You know.
What if somebody is
Yeah.
working night shift?
That happens. You know, there is such a thing like that, and it's possible to do it this way. By the way, I personally work the night shift also. I'll explain to you what that means. I'm a night shift guy. I'll explain to you what that means, right? Not exactly what you thought, but right, you'll understand what I'm telling you, right? But anyway, the point is, right, the morning is considered to be a time of chesed. Abraham Avinu, his midah was chesed. His quality was chesed. So therefore, he instituted the tefillah, which corresponds to his quality. You know what I mean? So they say, by the way, this is why it's so important to pray in the morning, shachrit, you know, kriyat shema, on time. Why is that? Because if you miss that, your whole day is like going down the tubes, basically. You know, you're like the whole day is becoming like a waste, right? That's why it says in Pirkei Avot, one of the things that remove a person from the world. You know what it is? Sleeping in the morning. You know, being a lazy guy. You know, forget about minyan. We can talk about right. We're going to talk about that. But I'm saying just the fact that he sleeps in the morning. You know, doesn't want to. What does that mean? So explains over there the mefarshim, the commentaries. What does that mean? He's sleeping in the morning. That means he doesn't say kriyat shema in the morning. You know, because kriyat shema there's a special time for that, right? The person has to say until the 3rd hour of the morning. Today, right nowadays, this is about 9 o'clock in the morning, something like that, whatever. So once a person goes past that time, kriyat shema he already missed. Then that's it, right? No more. So a person who wakes up at 9:30, 10 in the morning, he's already missing the boat. You know, yeah, where are you? You know, hello, you know, Boker Tov, you know, Jinam Shilobis. Where are you? You know, you're missing the whole point, right? That's the whole idea. So a person has to know that the very important thing in Judaism, right? That in the morning you got to wake up, right? Wait, what's the first halakha in the Shulchan Aruch? What's the first halakha? Not Natilat Yadayim. You know what's the first halakha is? It says, right, Itgaber Ka'ari, right? What does that mean? That a person should be strong like a lion, you know, in the morning to wake up on time. This is the first halakha. So you know what it's going to be, right? They say if you go to heaven, if you go to Shemaim after your 120th year, the first thing they're going to ask you is, you know, tell me, did you keep the Shulchan Aruch? What about the first halakha in the Shulchan Aruch? Did you keep it? Did you get up in the morning on time, or were you lazy bum? Right. Already the first halakha, right? You didn't fulfill, right? The first halakha. So now you're starting off with the left foot. You know what I mean? You know, matchana pechit. You know, that's the idea, right? So, right, this is what Abraham Avinu instituted, the morning prayers, which is a type of chesed. So very, very important. Right? What's the best way, by the way, to do the morning prayers? A person should do it when the sun rises. What does that mean? That he starts to do the prayers, Birkat HaShachar, Birkat HaTorah, Korbanot, Psikut Zimra, Kriyat Shema. He does all that before the sunrise. And then right when the sun rises, he does Amidah. You know, Amidah Zav Geba. You know, Amidah Zav. That guy, this is considered to be the best, top notch. Nothing like it, right? Why is that? Because when the sun is coming up, that's when the forces of Chesed, kindness, bursts through. So when you catch that moment and you start to pray that moment, you're catching the wave of the day. It's like when a surfer, right, right. It's like when a surfer, like he catches that wave, just takes him all the way. You'll see that, right? That's the idea, right? When you catch that wave, it takes you all day, that wave. It's like it pushes you right through everything, and you succeed. Like you get amazing success because of that. This is considered to be the best way. But if a person wasn't able to pray, right, Netzach Hama, not everybody can do that because people are tired at that time. You know how it is, right? Today people are lazy, this and that. They go to sleep late. 3:00 in the morning, he went to sleep. How's he going to wake up at 6? How's he going to wake up at 5 a.m., right? It's very hard. So because of that, right, we allow to pray until the 4th hour, which is about 10:20, right, something like that, whatever, 10:30. That's the last time to pray Shachrit. That's the last time. After that, it's already like, it's a makeup. It's not really Shachrit anymore. So you're making it up, right? Whatever. But the point is about time. Okay, very good. Now, when it comes to the afternoon prayers, who instituted that? It was Yitzchak Avinu, right? They say, by the way, it says in the Gemara that the afternoon prayers are considered to be very, very crucial. The Mincha prayer. Why is that? Because it says, right, that Eliyahu Navi, when he, right, Eliyahu Navi, when there was a whole thing that he made. There's a story, by the way, behind this. I'll tell you the story. Interesting story, right? What happened was, we talked about this last week a little bit, or last lecture, that Eliyahu Navi, right, had problems in his generation. There was a very sinful generation at that time. This was when the king Achav was alive, right? This was at the time. So what happened was that the Jews over there at that time were very sinful, very, very, very problematic. And Eliyahu had a big headache on his head all the time, Day and night he was worried, this and that. By the way, he used to accuse the Jews, in front of Hashem. He used to say to the Jews, what he said to say in front of Hashem? Your Jews, they gave up the covenant, they gave up the brit. He says, I'm fed up with them already. Telling Hashem like this, right? What did he mean by that, by the way? You know what he meant? That even Brit Milah they don't do anymore. Can you imagine? They were so bad, they stopped even doing Brit Milah. Right? That's how bad it was, So he told them, he says, your children abandon the covenant. He says, they abandoned the Brit. That's what he used to tell them. So Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, he says, Eliyahu says, don't accuse my children like that. I don't like when people do that. Don't speak badly about them. He says, you know what? Since you made this accusation against my children, he says, I'm going to punish you. What's going to be your punishment? Right? The punishment is that every time the Jews do a Brit Milah, you have to go to the party, right? You have to be there, right? That's your punishment. It's a nice punishment, right? Not too bad. Not too bad, right? But I told them every time the Jews, you know why? Because I want you to see that you're wrong. The Jews are keeping the Brit. And you accuse them not. Every time they make a Brit, you got to go there, no matter where it is, right? Whether it's in New York, in Miami, Venezuela, and Tel Aviv, wherever it is, in Haifa, wherever they're making the Brit, you got to go there, right? So they say this is the reason why every Brit that happens, Eliyahu Navi always comes there, even today, Eliyahu Navi comes to every Brit. That's the right, and that's why we have, Jimmy, right? We have the Kisei Eliyahu. Right, that's for him. That's what it's for, right? That's why we make Kisei Eliyahu, because we know that every Brit is required to come, right? By the way, he's a very fast driver. He has even better than 65, whatever, all these things. They say that Eliyahu is an angel now. When we talked about this, right, last lecture, that Eliyahu was taken from the world, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, you don't fit into this generation. You're too strong for them. You're too powerful for them. I'm going to take you. But what does that mean, take you? Doesn't mean, by the way, that Kadosh Baruch Hu killed him. He didn't die. He never died, Eliyahu Navi. He never died, right? So what happened? You know what happened, right? That he was taken by a fiery chariot, came from Shemaim. Fire, chariot, came and took him up to Shemaim. That was it, right? He never died. There's no kever, there's no grave of Eliyahu Navi. No such a thing like that, right? Because he never died, Eliyahu Navi. There was no such thing like that. We know the grave of many of the big tzaddikim, right? We know. But when it comes to Eliyahu Navi, keep looking for it, because you're not going to find it, right? It's not there. He was taken alive. Kadosh Baruch Hu took him alive. Why is such a thing like this? You know why? Because they say Eliyahu Navi was, in that sense, he was the greatest prophet that ever lived. What does that mean? That he went to such a high level that his body could not die anymore. There was no death by him. There was no such thing then. He was on a too high level to die. Right?
Generation?
No, I'm saying all times. Nobody reached a level like this, like Eliyahu Navi, that he was taken alive like this, because he was such on a high level that there was the concept of death didn't apply to him at all. You know what I mean? That didn't really apply. Can you imagine? This is something. To the point. Right, there was a flaw there. Right, they're right. Right, there was a flaw, but in terms of a spiritual level, he was like fire. He was unstoppable. This guy was nobody like him. So they say, right, what happened to Eliyahu Navi? Once Hakadosh Baruch Hu took him up with a chariot to the Shemaim, he became an angel. Right now, he's an angel. So he comes once in a while. He shows up here, there, right, all kinds of places. He shows up. Sometimes what he does, by the way, is he dresses up like a man. Like he dresses up like a man. He puts a costume on and he comes in and talks to people. These things kind of happen. These kinds of things, right? They say that the big rabbis, the big tzaddikim, are zoche to see Eliyahu Navi. He comes to them to teach them Torah. Can you imagine? He comes. What is he teaching them? What is he teaching them? Chumash. Chumash, we already know. What's there to teach, right? He's teaching them the secrets of the Torah. You know what I mean? That other people don't know these things. Kabbalah, all kinds of secrets, whatever. So the people who are zoche, the big Chachamim, he comes to them and teaches them. This is the way. Can you imagine? Eliyahu was something out of this world, right? Something unbelievable. So they say, by the way, so what happened was a story like this. Eliyahu Navi was fed up with that generation, right? As we said, right? Fed up with them. So you know what he said? He said to them, listen, he says, I'm going to show you guys now, I'm going to teach you a lesson to everybody. Enough is enough already with you guys. The way you behave, you abandon the Torah, you abandon the mitzvot. It's a disgrace. You know what the problem was in that generation? It was rampant. Avodah Zarah was rampant over there. Idolatry. Idolatry was like out of control. You know what I mean? It was like totally rampant. They say the Yetzer Hara was very big at that time for Avodah Zarah. Now we don't have the Yetzer Hara for that. Today, who has the Yetzer Hara to go to a church? Nobody has the Yetzer Hara like this. You know what I mean? But in those days, they were running to the church. Like they were like marathoning over there.
Even
Can you imagine? They were
all the proof they had from God and all the trials and tribulations they went through.
You know why? You know what that is? Because they say that there was a great pleasure in Avodah Zarah in those days. When a person would do Avodah Zarah, he would get a great feeling of satisfaction. Some kind of like something like he feels very content. There's some kind of thing like that. So because of that, right, the Avodah Zarah was very rampant at that time. So what he did was like this. He says, when he says there was one big cult of Avodah Zarah, which was called the Baal. Baal. So this Baal, everybody was into it. It was like the great big craze. The greatest craze of the generation, right? So what happened was they had also priests and they had temples for this, churches and all that kinds of stuff. Yeah, I'm talking about in Israel, right? I'm not talking about outside, right? So what happened was, right, that Eliyahu said, he says, listen, you Jews, what's with you? One, like we said, right, you have one foot over here, one foot over there. One day you're coming to the synagogue, next day you're going to the Baal, you're going to the, to the church. What's with you people? Decide who's right and who's wrong. Can't you make up your mind? So he says, you know what, I'm going to help you. If you cannot make up your mind, I'm going to help you. No problem. So he says, you know what, let's make a ceremony. All the people are going to come, in Israel. The priests of the Baal, and also, on my side, the rabbis like me. You know what I mean? And we're going to make like a demonstration to see who's the real God. Let's find out. Tachlis, let's go to the truth. So he says, you know what we'll do? I want to see if you guys accept this proposition that I give you. He asks the priests of the Baal, tells them like this. He says, you know what? We'll make a stage, right? Big stadium, big arena, right? Whatever. And he will put over there sacrifices to offer up to the Baal, to your Avodah Zarah, and to my God. Which one is the true one? So he says, whoever the fire comes down and eats up the sacrifice from heaven, that's the real God. Right? So he says, we'll find out who's the real God. Let's go. I challenge you. You want to go for it? They said, they had no choice, because if they would have said no, they would have said, you guys are chickening out, huh? So they said, you know what? Okay, we'll do it. So they're right. These guys are such cheaters. These guys must have been the Democrats over there, right? These guys. You know what? They did? What did they do? In order to facilitate, right, this whole contest, they put some, like stunt guys, like down below the stage, in order to like start the fire. That it should look like the fire came down and consumed. So they had people, under the stage who were ready, with blowtorches, to light up. They brought something like that, right? So what happened was, right, that they, in the end, Kadosh Baruch Hu sent over there, right, snakes and all kinds of scorpions and bit them, they killed them, So those people who were there, those prop guys, all got killed. So in the end, right, came now the time for the finale, right, of this whole event. So what happened was, right, that Eliyahu now he starts to call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It says, if you're the real God, bring down the fire and let them burn the sacrifices. And if your God is the real God, let the fire come down to your sacrifices. Where was this whole stunt? Where they did this? This is a place in Israel called Har Carmel, Mount Carmel, right? This is a very beautiful vacation area today. Gorgeous woods, like forest. One of the most beautiful places in Israel. It's close to Haifa, in the north. That's where it is, right? That's where he was. That's why we say, right, in the prayers, right? Misha anna Eliyahu behar Carmel, right? Yanenu, right? So that's the idea. So that's what we're talking about. So Eliyahu was over there. So what happened was, right, that he told it to the people of the Baal. He says, you know what? In order to make the contest even stronger, that there should be no monkey business, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put water on the sacrifices, pour water. So then the fire is very hard to burn. Once you have water, soaked in water, so it's very hard to burn it with fire. You know what I mean? The fire doesn't catch on. So he says, you know what I'm going to do? My sacrifices, I'm going to put over there water on it. So it's going to be like, you're going to see that it's going to be a real miracle. If the fire comes down and burns it, even when it's soaked in water, you're going to see what a great miracle it is, right? So what happened was, first he tells the people of the Baal, he says, you know what? You go first. Call out to your God, and see if the fire comes down, So they're calling out, Baal, Baal, Allah, 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 they're calling out like this, all these kinds of things. Nothing, right? Dead, the God is dead, what I mean? Nothing, nobody's answering, no answer, no peeps, no tweets, right? No nothing, right? Right? No texts, no WhatsApps, no nothing, right? Nothing coming through. And they started to, in order to facilitate this, they in those days, those idolaters, they believed in also gashing their skin, and pulling out their hair, to torture themselves. They were doing that. They started to gash with knives, gashing themselves, pouring out their hair, gishabi, this all kinds of stuff. Allah, wallah, 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 nothing coming down, right? Zero, right? Allah, wallah, bala, nothing coming, right? So what happens is now, right? He says, Eliyahu tells them, he says, no, we've been waiting for you for 3 hours already, Come on, let's get the show rolling. Nothing going on? So he says, you know what, let's try now my side. You ready? Right? So this now, once this whole thing went on, it was already mincha time, it was about 7 o'clock in the evening, right? Right before mincha time. Whatever, late afternoon. So Eliyahu starts to call out to Hashem, right? Fire came down, burned the whole thing, the whole thing got burned. So he told Eliyahu, told him, he says, you see, now who's the real God? Let's see. So what happened was, right, that what he did was, once he demonstrated to everybody that the real God was Hashem, you know what he did? He told the people who were the guards over there, the attendants, now take all the priests of the Baal and slaughter them, He slaughtered all the priests of the Baal over there, Made a shish kebab over there, barbecue, Slaughtered all of them, right? Not one of them got out alive over there, Every one of them was slaughtered and, eliminated, as they say, right? That was the idea. That's what happened, right? So now,
when you say priests, who were these people?
They were idolatrous priests.
But who were they following? Was there a leader for them?
Baal, it's Baal, it was a Baal, Baal.
So I guess there were many.
This was the main one. You understand? The big fad of the generation. You understand? That's the way it was. So what happened was, right, that Eliyahu proved at that time. So they say, the Gemara says, from this story, right, you see that Eliyahu, when was he answered? He called out at mincha time, So you see from the Gemara says that you should be careful about the mincha prayer. Because Eliyahu was only answered at mincha time. That's right? That's the idea. Okay, so then, right, we have also the Arvit prayer, right, which is at night, and this was made by Yaakov Avinu. By the way, they say the Arvit prayer is the weakest prayer of all prayers. Why is the Arvit prayer weak? What's the reason why? Because since we're saying it at night, that's the reason why, right? Because they say, the Chazal, that at night, Zohar Kadosh teaches us in the Kabbalah that it's all the forces of evil are very propagating at that time. Propagating. They're very strong at that time. They're ruling at that time. Forces of evil at night, right? So therefore, they don't allow the prayers to go up very high. They hold it down. They hold it down. They lock it up. It's like a person makes like a insulation, like a studio. Nobody can hear anything that's going out of there, right? The whole studio is insulated, right? The same thing over there. These guys, they know how to insulate the studio.
You sure it's not because we have 5 Bukharians and 2 Georgians here? That wouldn't be fancy.
Okay. You forgot the Persians. Okay. So anyway, right? Okay, so he's funny. Okay, so anyway, right? What we said was that the night prayer is the weakest one, right? But nevertheless considered to be also important, but not as strong as the morning and the afternoon prayers. So the question is, right? Okay, now we understand more or less, right? Whatever. But the question is, which one is the strongest one out of the three of them, right? So it says the Rakadosh, the Mincha is the strongest one. The most important one is the Mincha. Even though Shachrit, as we said, right, it's time of Chesed, time of kindness, but nevertheless, Mincha is the most important. So what does that mean? That a person should be very careful always not to miss the Tfilat Mincha, right? Even if he can't go to Minyan, by the way, you should say it wherever he is, right? He's in the office, he's wherever, he's at home, can't get out right now, he's babysitting, whatever it is, right? He's working, he's got a meeting, whatever it is, right? Say it whatever you are. If you can't get to the shul, doesn't mean you're now absolved. Wherever you are, say it. That's the idea.
What time should that be said again?
Before the sun goes down.
Before the sun.
Yeah, that's the idea, right? In the afternoon, before the sun goes down, right? So says Rakadosh, by the way, why is it that the Mincha prayer is better than all the others, stronger than all the others? You know why? Because it says that what happens is that the forces of din, of judgment, become stronger as the day goes along. As we said, right? The morning is a time of chesed, of kindness. Then in the afternoon, the judgment takes over. It gets stronger. As the time goes on, as you get close to sunset, right, the judgment becomes very strong at that time. This is the way it is. So what does that mean? In order to ward off the judgment, a person has to pray the mincha prayer in order to stop that, right? In order to control it. Otherwise, it can become too strong and get him, get you, right? So that's the idea. This is the reason why the forces of judgment have to be curtailed by the mincha prayer.
How much can we get? And how much more can we suffer?
This is the reason, by the way, why Yitzhak Avinu instituted the prayer of mincha. You know why? Because his quality was judgment. He was a gevurot. Yitzhak Avinu was very, very strong judgment. His quality was like that. That's the idea. So therefore, he made a tefillah to ward off such a strong judgment like that. That we shouldn't get too strong. What's the proof, by the way? One of the proofs. There's many proofs, but they say, right, that as we mentioned this last week, the Bet HaMikdash, right, we said it was burnt on Tisha B'Av. So when did they light the fire to the Tisha B'Av on the Beit HaMikdash? It was at mincha time, right? Why is that? Because the judgment gets very strong at that time. It's one of the proofs that they bring, right? From there, so therefore a person has to be very careful with the mincha prayer. That's what the Zohar Kadosh says, right? Most important one out of all of them. But of course, all of them have to be done, in general. But the mincha prayer is the most crucial one out of all of them, right? As we said, that's the idea. Okay. So now we understand more or less, right, the obligation of prayers. What about women, by the way, right? We can't leave out the ladies, right? We'll still treat them. So the question is, are they obligated to pray also, or they're not obligated to pray, right? So it says the Mishnah, by the way, Masechet Brachot, that the women are also obligated to pray. They also have obligation to do prayers. The problem is, in the Mishnah over there, it doesn't say how much, how often, how many times, doesn't say anything about that, So therefore, there's several opinions regarding the women. How often do they have to pray every day, right? So according to Tosfot, the women have to pray 3 times a day, just like the men. Shachrit, Mincha, and Arvit. But according to Rambam, it's only once a day. So the truth is, Rabbi, that we Sephardim go like the Rambam. So what does that mean? That our ladies don't have to pray 3 times a day. Once a day is enough. So what does that mean? They can either do Shachrit or Mincha or Arvit, one of them, right? Whichever one they have time to do. Right? They say the morning is the best, whatever. But whatever they can do, they can do one prayer a day. That's enough. And also, when it comes to women, right, there's a little bit difference also regarding what? Regarding how much they have to do, how much they have to pray. Because we, by us in the morning, Shachrit takes like an hour. You know what I mean? But for women, she can knock it off in 15 minutes. Because their obligation is much shorter. They don't have all the obligations. They're too busy taking care of their home, taking care of their children. They don't have time to pray for an hour. Which woman has the time to pray for an hour? They're too busy with their housework, all kinds of things, right? So therefore, right, we say the women basically, what's their obligation? Obligation is just to do Birkat HaShachar, Birkat HaTorah, right, and then to do the Shema Yisrael, just the first pasuk or the first paragraph. Even that they're not obligated. It's a minhag. And then they do Amidah. And that's it, right? They're done. That's it, right? What does that mean? About 15 minutes maximum. They can finish the whole thing, right? They don't have to do more than that. But the men have to do more. They have to do this. They have to do that. Korbanot, psuke de zimra, this birkat, right? Birkat kriyat shema, brachot shel kriyat shema. They have much more, things to do than the women. That's the idea, right? So the women can knock it off very fast. But also, right, as we said, there's corresponding to all this. There's also the obligation of praying with a minyan. So where do we find such an obligation like that? So it says in the Gemara, Masechet Brachot, right, that en tfilato shel adam nishmat ela b'minyan. What does that mean? A person's prayer is not heard unless he goes to minyan. Right? What's the reason why it's only heard when he goes to minyan? Because they say, right, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't refuse the prayer of the community. The community has a stronger power than the individual. You know what I mean? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at a community, he says, wow, we have here several people who need mercies. So he considers them more than the individual. Right, that's the idea, So therefore, they say, right, that really the best way to get your prayers heard is to go to minyan. Over there, they say, right, that even if the people over there, they're Rashaim, Rashak Be'aryan, still HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to them. You know why? Because when you have 10 people is minyan, right? That's the idea. 10 men, right? So there, a person has to, right, go to a minyan. Therefore, a person should try to go always to minyan, whenever possible. Sometimes it's not possible, You have business, you have this, you have that, all kinds of things, all kinds of issues. You know how it is, right? Life is not perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. So sometimes a person cannot go to minyan, right? And sometimes he's not obligated also to go to minyan, for certain reasons. He's absolved. We're going to talk about that, right? What the reasons are. But nevertheless, Rabbi, so the question is like this, right? Okay, we said that a person's prayer is really heard only when he's praying with a minyan. But what about if he's not praying with a minyan? So what should he do, right? Just what give up? Give up hope? Is that what he should do? He still has to pray anyway, right? But the question is, how can he make his prayers heard when he's not praying with a minyan? So you know what it says in Gemara? It says, right, tzarich lasim kafo benafsho. You know what that means? How do I translate this into English or Georgian? Guli ochel shidai duaso. Let him place his heart in his hand.
So
what does that mean?
Kavanah.
That's the idea, right? Close, right? The idea is that a person has to do more kavanah, more concentration, and more heart. More desire. You know how it is, right? When a person has a desire, he says it with his heart. By the way, they say that the tefillah, the prayers it's a prayer of the heart. I mean, it's a mitzvah of the heart. What is the mitzvah of the heart? The prayers. You understand? What does that mean? That a person, when he prays, he has to pray with his heart. Not just like automatic, like like a tuki, like a machine. Who wants to hear that? Hashem, right? It says Rachamana li babai. You know what that means? Kadosh Baruch Hu wants the heart. He wants to see the heart of the people. He wants to get your heart in the prayers, right? The Georgians know about the heart. We're heart people. We're very heart people. That's the way we are, right? That's the idea. So a person has to pray, especially if he's not with minyan. They say, right? Make sure you put your heart into it. Guli dasuri, that's the way a person has to do. And if he does it that way, so then the truth is, right, even if he's not with a minyan, he can have his prayers heard like that. But besides that, as Jimmy said, right, it has to be also concentration. What does it mean, concentration? He has to know what he's talking about, If a person doesn't know what he's reading, by the way, just reading, blah, 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 he doesn't know one word over there. So then, if he's going to pray alone, his prayers are not going to be heard like that. You know what I mean? He doesn't know what he's saying. That's why it's a mitzvah. It's a great mitzvah, by the way. One of the great mitzvot is that a person should study the Siddur, and know what he's praying. You know what I mean? If you don't know what you're praying about, so then what's it worth like that? Not really much. So that's why they say, right? If a person doesn't know the prayers, what they're talking about, try to go to minyan as much as possible. That's the idea. Because over there, it's a different rules over there. You understand? Different rules over there apply. Kadosh Baruch Hu hears everybody, no matter what, right? All the rules are broken, It's like you have a big discount over there. So this is the reason why a person should try to go to minyan, right? That's the idea. The question is like this, right? We just said, okay, we emphasize this pretty much, but the question is it really an obligation to go to minyan, or is it something recommended? This is the question, right? So the truth is, right, in the Shulchan Aruch we find, it says like this, the language is, ishtadel, right, adam lelechet leminyan. What does that mean? The person should try. So meaning what? That when it comes to minyan, it's not your performance that we judge, it's your effort. if you tried and you couldn't, it's okay, you're all right. But if you don't try, you don't care, so then, you got a problem, you know what I mean? That's the whole idea. You have to try. What does that mean? Make an effort, try to schedule, have a schedule, try to do things, and don't let people bother you, they come to tell you, oh, take me over here, do this for me now, wait for me, I got to pray, my friend. Wait for half hour, what's going to be? No, the world's not going to be destroyed. Wait for me for half hour, I'll finish my prayers, then I'll take you wherever you want. Let me do my job. First comes God. That's the way it is, right? Hashem comes first. There are sometimes, by the way, that a person has to forego that. What does that mean? Let's say his father tells him, right, his parents, drive me over there, so he can skip minyan for that, because kibud avim is more important. Kibud avim, honoring your parents, is more important than going to minyan. Why is that? Because going to minyan is only from the rabbis, and kibud avim is from the Torah. One of the 10 Commandments. You know what I mean? So therefore, a person has to be much more careful. So for sure, if the parents tell him, take me somewhere, they need to go there. Now, not just for nonsense. You know what I mean? But they really need to go somewhere. So they need to buy medicine, to buy food, something like that. He's allowed to skip minyan for that reason. It's okay. He's got a mitzvah to do right now. They can't wait for him. They can't wait 2 hours. They can't wait. They need it now. I'm hungry now. Bring me food. I'll bring you in 2 hours. Thank you very much. 2 hours, I'll be already. I'll faint already in 2 hours. What's going to be? What's in 2 hours? He needs it now. So a person like that, the truth is, to be honest with you, if a person needs to go right now to do something for his parents, something urgent, they need to eat or whatever, they need medicine, something which they really need, a person is allowed to skip minyan, and not only that, he's allowed to skip prayers altogether. You know what I mean? He's allowed to skip the prayers also. Why? Osek mitzvah, patur mitzvah. If you're doing a mitzvah, you don't have to do the other mitzvah. Now I'm doing this mitzvah. That's the way it is. So a person, can go pretty far with that. Same thing, by the way, similar, also applies, let's say, right, his wife needs him now, to take him somewhere. And it's urgent, something important. Not just something ridiculous, whatever. So if it's something, which is important for his wife, he can skip minyan for that too. You know what I mean? She needs that. She can't do it herself. If she can do it herself, let her drive herself. If she drives herself, okay. But some women don't drive. Whatever it is, right? All kinds of things. So in a case like that, if a person really needs to go somewhere urgent with his wife, let's say, for instance, there are some women who have jobs, but the husband drives them to the work, whatever, so she has to go now to the job. So what can you do? Sometimes you got to drive her. It's just no choice, whatever. She needs it, So a person, has to know all these things, right? How to manipulate all these things. But in general, if a person doesn't have really something important to do right now, so we should try to go to minyan. That's the idea, That's the idea.
I didn't know that prayers were an obligation. It was a rabbinical obligation.
Well, the truth is, that what I said was going to minyan was rabbinical. But the essence of the prayers, to pray every day, is from the Torah. You know what I mean? That's what the Rambam says, right? What does that mean? From the Torah, you're obligated to pray once a day. Something. Some kind of prayer every day. But the rabbis made like a special, formula for that. That's the idea, because they knew how to effectuate the prayers properly. You know what I mean? So you should do the ways the rabbis said, because the rabbis knew how to make your prayer accepted. And also what you should be praying for. You know what I mean? That's the idea. So the essence of prayer every day is from the Torah. But going to minyan is from the rabbis. That's for sure, right? It's not from the Torah.
I have a feeling you had a hand in those decisions.
Well, who, by the way, made these the prayers that we have today? Who made this formula that we have today? You know who it was made by? A little bit before my time, right? A little bit before. This was the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, right? What does that mean? That after the Second Temple was rebuilt, came there, the great scholars of that generation, 120 people, and they had a big court over there, high court. It was called Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. That was the name, right? The men of the great assembly. Right? This was the people. These people were very great. There was also prophets. There were 3 prophets there with them at that time, right? Who was that? Right? Zechariah, Malachi, Haggai. Right? Those 3 prophets were there. So they had 120 men, amongst them 3 prophets, and those were the people who made the prayers that we have today. So these prayers are considered to be, they knew all the secrets also. So every word in prayer that we have, it's like a secret. There's all kinds of secrets there. So a person should never, God forbid, try to change these things, to alter the prayers. Because if you know how smart they were, the people who made these prayers, you would never put your hand on it, right? You would never touch it, because this is considered to be the Holy of Holies, right? You should know, by the way, that the prayers are different when there's a galut and when there's Bet HaMikdash is built. When the Bet HaMikdash is built, you don't need such a long prayer, lengthy prayer, because the prayers are accepted right away. Because when we have Bet HaMikdash, it's like a magnet for prayers, takes them in. When there's no Bet HaMikdash, it's very hard to get the prayers accepted. So therefore, you need a stronger formula, a longer one, with all kinds of ingredients there, all kinds of things. They knew how to do all these ingredients, you know what I mean? So these things, the rabbis that did them, there's one version which is for the galut, and there's one version which is for the Bet HaMikdash. So there's two different versions altogether. So when the Bet HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt, we're not going to be doing these prayers that we do today. Much shorter, much more condensed, much easier. By the way, you don't have to make a big effort in those days. When the Bet HaMikdash is built, to have your prayers accepted, all you have to do is just call out to Hashem. He's right there for you. Right there with open arms. It's a different generation. It's a different quality. When it's galut, by the way, you know what the Chazal say, right? During the galut, after the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, you know what it is like the prayers? It's like they said, it's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu put an iron, wall between us and Him. What does that mean? Can you imagine? To get the prayers accepted, you have to go through an iron wall. That's why it's so difficult. That's why you need minyan. That's why you need the concentration. That's why you need the heart, right? You need all these things and the specific formula, right? All that stuff. Because otherwise, it's like going through iron. The Iron Curtain, that's you remember, right? The Reagan, right? That's the whole thing, right? That's the idea. That's the whole. There was an Iron Curtain. There's an Iron Curtain there. That's the idea. So a person has to make a big effort for prayers, and this is the reason.
Doesn't say that God hears everyone.
Yeah, that's for sure. The truth is that yes, He hears everybody. Everything that is said, every prayer that is said is accepted in some form. You know what I mean? But if you want it to be, powerful, to have the power to be effectuate, you know what I mean? Because they say, right, the truth is that every prayer has some kind of influence. No prayer goes to waste altogether. But the problem is that since we have an Iron Curtain, right, so you need to keep shooting, until you break it down. Like you have to do a lot of shots. Boom, 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 boom. You need like a big submachine gun, You can't. One prayer doesn't do the trick, but every prayer makes a dent. You know what I mean? That dent is made, and keeps going, right? As I say, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, right, I'm not going to let you into Eretz Israel. We talked about that last week, right? So he said 500 prayers in order to change the decree, right? So they say, right, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, they said, Moshe Rabbeinu, he told Moshe, he says, don't do any more prayers. He said, that's it, stop there. Because if you do one more, I have to accept you, So he told him, he said, stop right there. Enough is enough. That's what I tell him, right? Stop right there. That's the idea right there. Okay, so we understand, right, more or less what's the idea. So a person should always try to go to Minyan, right? But there's also, when it comes to Minyan, there's several rules regarding how the Minyan is done and so forth and so on, right? First of all, a person has to know one thing. We need 10 adult Jewish men, right? That's the idea. What is adult? After 13, right? We don't do 18 years old. We're not. This is not legal age, right? We're not talking about drinking age, right? Or cigarettes. We're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about bar mitzvah, right? If a boy is 13 years old, he's considered to be gadol already, right? But we also, the truth is, right, that it's a little bit more complicated than that. What does that mean? The question for number one, right? Question is, do the women count in the minyan? The answer is no. They do not count, right? Since they're not obligated to go to minyan, they're not obligated, by the way, to go to minyan. Right? Since they're not obligated, they have no portion in this mitzvah. So therefore, they're not counted in the minyan. It's a little bit different, by the way, when it comes to other things. For instance, I'll give you an example, right? Give you a contrast. Let's say if you're reading the Megillah, right? There's a mitzvah to come to hear the Megillah on Purim, right? So it's also mitzvah to come to 10 people, to read the Megillah. There should be a minyan there, So over there we say that the women count. You know why? Because they're obligated to hear the Megillah. Since they're obligated to hear the Megillah, they do count in the minyan, right? But here, since they're not obligated to go to the minyan, to pray daily prayers, so therefore they don't count in the minyan either. That's the idea, right? They're not a part. They don't have a part in this mitzvah. That's the idea, right? So therefore, a woman doesn't really, by the way, right? You should know, a woman doesn't really have to come to shul. There was one lady, I remember, like a few months ago, something really funny, right? You know who this lady is. I'm not going to mention her name, right? I don't want to embarrass anyone, right? So this lady, right, comes and calls up one of our gabbaim over here, right? Shalom, Shalom. You ask him, he'll tell you about the story. So I was like this, right? She calls him up. She says, this lady, by the way, she likes to complain a lot. She likes to always voice her complaints. She's a very verbose kind of a lady, right? Whatever. So, right? So she comes and calls up Shalom. I was here when this was going. So he says, why is it? Tell me, he says, why is it that the rabbi's wife never comes to the shul? That's what she complained, right? Because if you know what she meant to say, if the rabbi's wife doesn't come, why should I come? I'm also a woman. You know why? Because she goes to a different shul. She goes to Big Gavil over there. The Bukharian shul over there. So she does. If you want me to come, tell the rabbi's wife also to come. So after they finished the conversation, I told Shalom, I said, this is nonsense what you say. Be honest with you. Why is it nonsense? The reason it's nonsense is because women are not obligated to come to shul. They really don't have to come to shul at all, even a whole year. No such thing like that, right? They have no mitzvah to be in the Minyan, to hear the Torah readings, all kinds of things like this. Only there are certain things, right, that they come and do, right? When it comes to hearing the shofar, even though they're not obligated, custom is to come in. Also, when it comes to hearing the Parshat Zachor, right, that we do on Purim, right, the day before, right, the Shabbat before, they come to that also. There are some times that they do come, but the truth is, in general, a woman doesn't have to come to Minyan at all. Even on Yom Kippur, by the way, she's not obligated to come on Yom Kippur. Even on Rosh Hashanah, she's not obligated to come. Says the Gaon of Vilna, by the way, that it's better if they don't come at all. It's better that they should stay home. Why is that? Okay, so says the Gaon of Vilna, you know why? When they come, they're probably going to do more sins than they're going to do mitzvot. What does that mean? Right? I'll explain to you what that means, right? It says the Gemara, Masech Teruvin, that when it comes to the quality of talking, talking, they say 10 measures came down to the world, right? Of talking, 10 measures. 9 of them took the women, and 1 was left for the rest of the world. So what does that mean? Right? As you probably may well know, that women like to talk a lot more than the man, right? That's the way it is, right? They talk about maybe 10 times more than we do, on the average.
I would challenge that. It was definitely true until I started sitting in Dunkin' Donuts.
It seems like you forgot what happened in the old days, David, when you were because the women are telephones, day and night. They don't stop. All day and night they're on the phone with their friends. When they're cooking, they're on the phone. When they're doing this, they're on the phone. Changing diapers, they're on the phone.
My wife is an exception.
God bless you.
I'm serious.
You understand? That's the way it is. Women they like to talk. You can't stop them. And by the way, this is also something good, in a sense. You know why? Because since women like to talk, they find out about everything. Nothing escapes them. They know all the gossip. They know all the right. You know how it is, right? They know all the gossip. They know everything that's going on. Right. That's the way it is, right? So what does that mean? That the ladies are the vehicles for knowledge. Sometimes they have a lot more knowledge than we do. Right? They know what's going on more than we do. We're not so involved with that stuff. Knowing what's going on in the community, this and that. So there's something good about that too. In a sense. They have to be careful, by the way, not to speak Lashon Hara. Because when a person talks a lot, right? As Shlomo Melech said, Shlomo Melech, you know what he said? He said that with many words, there's always a sin. When you speak a lot, there's always going to be some sin there. There's going to be Lashon Hara, there's going to be Nibul Peh, there's going to be all kinds of things, right? Motzi Shemra. When a person talks a lot, he's always transgressing something there. So the best way to save yourself from sinning is to just be quiet.
Rabbi,
that's the best way.
I have a dilemma about Lashon Hara. I know what it is. I know it's forbidden.
Yeah.
Is talking about someone in general.
Yeah.
Even if it's positive.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm talking about someone with somebody else.
Right.
That I know.
Yeah.
I know both of these people, and it's nothing negative.
Right. Yes.
As a matter of fact, let's say most of the time it's positive.
Right.
I'm telling the other guy what a great guy the other guy is.
Right. Yes.
Is that considered Lashon Hara?
It's interesting what he's saying, right? I don't know how we caught this. You caught something really good there, right? Because the truth is, right, there's Lashon Hara, which is a prohibition of the Torah. You know what I mean? A very big prohibition. But there's also something called Avak Lashon Hara. You know what that means in English? Dust of Lashon Hara. Dust. So this is from the rabbis, this prohibition. What does that include? One of the things that includes is talking also praises about people. They say you shouldn't do that.
Oh, really?
Don't praise people too much, you know?
Uh-huh.
What's the reason why? Anybody?
know that?
Can you guys guess what the reason is?
So, yes.
Don't praise people too much.
I'm praising you.
Yes.
But Azul doesn't like.
Ah.
To me, you are the best guy in the
So
world.
don't praise me in front of Anzor. Do it with some
But
other
I'm
people.
Doesn't make any
talking
difference.
about you.
Yeah, right.
I'm praising you.
Is that the reason? Yes.
So you know what the rabbis say? You should not praise people too much in front of the people. You know why? Because you're gonna come to say also something bad about them as well. What does that mean? From the praise is also gonna come something bad. You know how it is, right? You say something good.
So Jimmy comes over to me, or he calls
Yeah.
me tonight, and he
Right.
says, David, Rabbi Mike is a wonderful guy.
Yeah, right.
What am I supposed to tell him? Jimmy, that's
It's an interesting question. So you know what I'll tell you what's
I
interesting
can't
over here.
tell him, yes, you're absolutely
Okay, you guys, you have to know.
He is absolutely right. In my eyes, you're correct.
What happens
What
like
do I
this,
tell
right?
you?
You can agree, it's no problem.
What can I tell you?
In my eyes,
Yes.
to me, he's also great.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you know what it is. It goes like
And
this.
My mother had a big argument with my father about this. That's one of the biggest arguments my mom had with my
I like that. Okay, that's good.
לא עקב עם הדמיינס როგორც יצרודה, from the surface. Oh,
Okay. So the rule of Lashon Hara is like this. Over here.
It's an interesting thing. I always.
So the rabbis don't say praises of somebody. You know why? Because from those praises you're going to come to something bad. You know why? How does it work? You're going to say something good. There's going to be something that doesn't agree with you.
Yeah.
You're going to say, oh, but you don't know what I know about this guy.
Right.
I'll tell you some things that you didn't know, right? So therefore they say, right, don't say praises of people. But what's the exception to that rule? There's an exception to the rule. There's always an exception to everything. There's the rule, there's the exception, right? So the truth is, when are you allowed to say Lashon Hara? I'm talking in general, right? When are you allowed to say?
When somebody asks
Even if you're, no, so the truth is, even if you're being honest, it's not allowed to say. But when are you allowed to say? When there's a benefit from that, something to learn from that, you know what I mean? Like a moral story, some kind of thing, Like this guy, he did this and, and then he got into trouble. So you want to teach this person, right, that don't do that. So I saw this guy, he did it, he got into trouble like that. So don't be stupid like him. So if you're saying it for that reason, you're allowed to say. Because there's a benefit for it, you know what I mean? The Gemara, by the way, the Talmud is full of stories like that. That some people did some bad things. These rabbis, some rabbi did make a mistake, all kinds of things. But it's Lashon Hara. Why does the Talmud say these things? You know why? Because we're learning a moral lesson from that. So when there's a moral lesson to learn, it's called to'elet, right? There's a benefit to say. So there we have to say, That's the idea. This is the reason why, right? There's also another thing. I remember that you, last week, right? You spoke about some guy who passed away and he did something wrong. Right? We talked about it, right? Whatever. So I know what I told you. I said, you're allowed to say that. Why did I say that? What's the reason why? Because the person is already dead. So the truth is, right? When it comes to saying Lashon Hara, you're allowed to say Lashon Hara about dead people. There's no prohibition, right? I have to teach you what that means, right? Wait, Jimmy, let me qualify this, right? It's not it's like God, rules of God. What can I do? I can't change it, right? Okay, it doesn't make sense, but
You
know why that is, Jimmy? The reason why it's like this, right? The reason is because the reason you're not allowed to say Lashon Hara, you know why that is? Because it causes a person shame, it causes them damage in reputation, right? All these things, it can cause them financial loss.
You always told me it's worse than killing a person.
It's same thing, right? It's like killing, it's like that. So, but when it comes to a dead person, these things do not apply, right? There's no shame for him. He's already in Shemaim. He's Gan Eden. He doesn't know what's going on over here.
But
You know what I mean? He doesn't feel, these things.
Some people that thought of him as a good person change their mind.
Right, but he doesn't care about that. See, that's the whole thing, right? Once he's over there, by the way, you should know one thing. I want to tell you guys something very important. Which is a mistake which is being made in many communities. I see here in Queens. People are too preoccupied with the dead. They're more preoccupied with the dead than with themselves. This is a very big mistake. You know why? Because we come to this world to worry about ourselves first of all. You know what I mean?
Georgian thing.
Yeah, but it's Georgian, but it's also Persian, it's also Bukharian, it's all over the place, this thing. You know what I mean? It's all over, this idea. So a person has to know, right? Don't be preoccupied with the dead. What does that mean? That they're in a very good place. They're doing much better than you are. Believe me when I tell you, right? If you would see how great they're doing Gan Eden, they're in paradise. You know what I mean?
I'm not in a rush, Rabbi.
Yeah, they're in paradise. So what do you worry about them for? Worry about yourself.
Now everybody's doing better than I'm doing.
I got you. Okay, I got you. God help, whatever, right? So the idea is like this, right, Rabbi? The reason why we come to this world is to elevate our own souls by doing Torah and mitzvot. You know what I mean? So if there's a contradiction between the dead and us, we have to take the priority, not them. You know, because they're already where they should be. You know, they already finished their life in this world. You know, so a person has to know when it comes to these things, we are not here for the dead. We're here for the living. You know, so the living come first. The person has to understand that, right? So what does that mean? If it comes to a choice of, you know, let's say, for instance, right, learning Torah for himself, or, you know, doing something for the dead, you know, doing some going to the graveyard, you know, and visiting the dead. It's more important to learn Torah.
So why do we bother with Kaddish and making tables every?
Because there are certain things that the rabbis commanded us to do in order to help those people to elevate their souls over there, you know. But the thing is, like, don't go too far. You know what I mean? Don't go overboard. There's a limit to everything. You know, they say, right, that a person is not allowed to mourn than 1 year for the dead. If you do that, you're going too far. You know, stop crying. What are you crying about? That's enough. You know. No, stop. Thank you. Stop. You know, yeah, it's difficult, but a person has to know. You know, enough is enough. 1 year is enough. You know, that's it. Now go on with your life. Right? You gotta go on because you're not here. You're not here for them. You're here for yourself.
So every time you remember him, it brings you tears.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, it can happen. That's not called mourning.
That's not cool.
No, just, you know, you're getting emotional. You know. Yeah. What I'm saying is, you know, don't make it into like institution. You know, all the time crying, all the time. You know, like, you know, getting into this mode. Like, what are you crying about? He's gone, man. You know, he's in Gan Eden. What do you want from him? What do you want from this guy? You know. That's the idea. You know. So. You know, there's a story about this, by the way. I'll tell you guys something really interesting, right? There's a story about the Baba Sali, you know, that the Baba Sali was one of the great rabbis of this generation. You know, he was like a miracle maker. They say, right? He was from Morocco, yeah, but he was in Eretz Israel. He moved to Eretz Israel afterwards. He was also in France for a while. You know, wandering Jew, you know, like everybody else, right? He was wandering around like everybody else. So what happened was that the Baba Sali was a miracle maker. You know, this man was like miracles all over. There are books written about his miracles, by the way. You can buy and see them. Unbelievable stuff. We're talking about somebody who was alive in our generation. We're not talking about 2,000 years ago. So what happened was that the Baba Sali, he had a brother called Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak. You know, he was also a rabbi. But Baba Sali was more famous than him, you know. He was also a big rabbi. This whole family was big rabbis. You know, this very holy family, Abu Chatzera. A big holy family, right? So what happened was that one time, right, that Rabbi Yitzchak, when he was alive, he did something, you know, whatever. Something happened between them, and Baba Sali, right, Baba Sali gave him some bad advice, whatever, something the wrong way, whatever, you know. So what happened was that Rabbi Yitzchak, he was upset, you know, that he hurt Rabbi Yitzchak, you know, from what happened. So he was, you know, crying about it, getting emotional, you know, this and that, whatever, you know. Why did I do this to my brother, you know? How could I do such a thing? I don't remember the whole story, you know, something, whatever. So the point is like this, right? That one day they say, right, that Rabbi Yitzchak came to Baba Sali in a dream. You know, one night he was sleeping. You know, he told him, he says, "My brother," he says, "Why are you crying about me?" He says, "Why are you getting so emotional?" He says, "What do you want from me?" He says, "You know what a good place I'm in? I'm in Gan Eden. You know, I'm living it up." He says, "You should be crying for yourself. What are you crying for me for? You know, I'm in a much better place than you. What are you crying for me about? What's there to cry? You know, what are you crying about? I'm already gone. That's it. You know, I'm in the other world." So why am I telling you this, right? The idea is like this, when it comes to Lashon Hara, saying about the dead, that's why it's allowed. You know why? Because they don't feel these things anymore. They have no connection with this world. They don't care about the embarrassment anymore. They don't care. You know, they don't care. Yeah, they have no.
People that I didn't like. You know, and I didn't want to say.
But there is a nuance, right?
Got
it.
I'm joking. There's nobody.
No, but you know, the truth is there is a nuance though regarding this, right? Person has to know. There's always the plus and there's always the minus. The negative side of this is like this, right? You're allowed to say Lashon Hara about the dead, but you're not allowed to say Motzi Shemra about the dead. What's the difference between this and that? Lashon Hara means it's true, whatever you say. Right? It was something true. That you're allowed to say.
But that's not a Lashon Hara.
That's called Lashon Hara when it's true, right? The definition of Lashon Hara is something which is true, right? So then what is Motzi Shemra? Motzi Shemra is something which is not true. Some kind of gossip, you know, they made up about him, you know? That's a gamoy gonas, you know? It happens all the time, by the way. People make up stories, you know? Never happened such a thing like that. Yeah. So there, if a person says like this, lies about a person, he gets punished for that very, very severely, you know? Because you're saying things which are not true. That's something else. But when a person is alive, you're not allowed to say even something which is true. You know, unless there's a benefit for it. To learn something from there. You know what I mean? That's something else. So all the more so when it comes to Abok Lashon Hara, right? What does that mean? when we're talking about things which are to praise somebody, right? So as we said, right, you shouldn't do that either. But if it's something which is benefit, to get a benefit, what does that mean? You're praising him to show people, to be like that, as an example, Oh, look at this guy, how nice he is, how great he is, Try to emulate his ways. So if a person is saying it for that reason, there's a benefit for that, he's allowed to say. That's the idea. So the general rule is, right, when something has a benefit for Lashon Hara, you're allowed to say. To learn something from there, things like this. But a person has to be very, very careful about Motzi Shemra. Don't make up stories about people if you're not sure if they did that, Don't, I heard, Gavige, Ragage, what did you, Ragage, all kinds of nonsense people make up. There's when we were in grade school, what happened was, right, that the teacher showed us a lesson. He showed us a trick. What was the trick that he showed us? He says, I want you to know how badly things get transmitted from mouth to mouth. So he says, what I'm going to do? There's 30 people in the class. I'm going to say something to one of the people. They're going to keep going right around the whole class. Each one's going to tell the other, and the last guy's going to tell me what I said. Right? You understand? So what happened was they tested, right? So they went around the whole class, and in the end, when she came back to her, it was totally something different altogether. You understand? That's what happens when things get transmitted from one mouth to another. They don't go accurately. So this is Motzi Shemra. Once you get into this, unless you know that person did what he did, unless you saw it with your own eyes, don't say things. You never know. Maybe he didn't do it. Maybe he didn't.
Mamuka calling me up one day. I thought he's calling a friend of ours.
Yeah.
We grew up together. Called me up just to hang out, play baseball. When he called me up to ask me if it's true that my grandmother was married 6 times. I said,
60 times.
I said she was married twice.
Yeah.
She actually was, because the first guy left when my brother was. Said she had a second husband, yes, but not 6.
Okay, I got you. You understand this, right? Yeah. They exaggerate. That's one of the things they do. That's the whole idea. But if there's a benefit for it to learn something from there, you're allowed to say. But don't say lies, Don't say just rumors, all kinds of nonsense, I heard. What you heard? What kind of thing is this?
Well, people love embellishments.
Yeah, that's the way it is, right? That's the idea. So getting back to what we said, Rabbi, regarding the Minyan, you need 10 people, right? The truth is, right, the Chazal say also, the Poskim, they talk about this at length, by the way, that these people should be Shomer Shabbat, people who keep Shabbat also. If he's not Shomer Shabbat, it's a very cheesy Minyan, very, very weak. Some people say there's no Minyan wrong, So they say, right, when it comes to something like that, the person is not Shomer Shabbat, try to get other people, in the Minyan. If you can't, let's say there's the Minyan, right? When we started out over here, let's face it, right? I remember, I was here, Most people were not Shomer Shabbat over here, what I mean? That's the way it was. We started out over here, right? The people were like, things were, the situation was bad.
So what happens?
So what happens is like this, right? If you need to start a Minyan like that in a community where most of them are not, you're allowed to start it. You know why? Because there is an opinion that allows that today, in our times, and since there's no other way to do it, otherwise nothing will get moving, you're going to go nowhere like that. So in a case like that, we say, just get started. And in the end, things will get better, Right, exactly. God will help. And that's exactly what happened, by the way, over here. Now most people here are more Shomer Shabbat. The people who come every day, on a daily basis, they're mostly Shomer Shabbat. In the old days, it was mostly not Shomer Shabbat. Right? That's the way it was. Even the presidents, by the way, I remember, they were not Shomer Shabbat. They were not.
At that time, people came because they wanted to come. Now people come because they have to.
That's the way it was, That's the way it was. So that's the idea of it. So it has to be also, right, try to go to a Minyan where it's people who are keeping Shabbat, number one. That's also one thing. Another important thing to know is like this, right? When are you considered to be with a Minyan? When is it considered to be with a Minyan? It has to be, right, that you're in the same room. If I'm standing over here in this room, right, and those guys are standing over there, I don't combine with them in the Minyan. It has to be in one room. Right, there's a wall between us, right? There's a mechitza between us, so therefore I don't really combine to the Minyan, right? So a person has to be careful that when he goes to a Minyan, try to be with them in the same room. That's the idea, right? If you're not in the same room with them, is there a way to solve the problem? There's a solution for everything, as I told you. There's a solution for everything. How do you solve the problem? Let's say you can't get into the room, it's jammed, right? Jammed over there, right? Let's say Yom Kippur, Balagan, bach. So what should you do in order to be with the Minyan? So, you know what the best thing to do is? To make a line of vision between you and them. Through a door, through a window, right? Something like that. If they can see you, part of them, not all of them, some of them can see you, and you can see them also, you're with the Minyan. That's the idea. So if you go up to the Ezat Nashim, let's say, right, you want to pray up there for some reason, whatever, you want to hang out with the ladies over there, right? We're talking about when there's no ladies over there, right? Otherwise, you shouldn't be there at all. But there's no ladies, let's say. You want to go up there and pray there, So, right? If you want to go up there and pray, there's no ladies there. So if they can see you and you can see them, some of them, you're considered to be with the minyan, even though you're not in the room, because being on the second floor, it's a different room over there. It's different. Right, it's under one roof, but it's a different domain. You know why? Because there's a separation with the wall. Right? There's a fence separating us over there. So therefore, right, really the truth is the women over there, they're not really with the minyan, technically speaking, but if there's a line of vision, you're with the minyan. So therefore, if a person cannot go into the room where the minyan is for some reason, what he should do is make a line of vision through a window, through a door, right, something like that. Once he has that, he's considered to be with the minyan, right? That's the idea. But that applies when it comes to praying the Amidah. Amidah Zerot Geba. But when it comes to answering for Kaddish and Kedusha, like he hears, Kaddish, Kedusha, Baruch Hu, things like that, even though he's not with the minyan, he can answer them anyway. Let's say he's outside altogether, right? There's no line of vision. If he hears them, he's allowed to answer. You know why? Because inside they have a minyan over there, right? Even though he's not with them, technically speaking, but he's allowed to answer because in the case of like that, just to answer for these things, you don't need to be inside the minyan itself. As long as you hear them, right? And so what does that mean? By the way, that also applies. You know when it applies? Let's say if a person calls up somebody, it was a phone conversation, right? Or some kind of video chat, whatever. So if let's say you heard that person made a bracha, or let's say the guy's in shul, right? And you hear them praying over there, you're allowed to answer. Those Kaddish, Kedusha, all these things. You know why? Because even though you're not there, right? The fact that they're saying it now, they're saying it now. That's not the real voice coming through your phone. Right? That's just a electronic thing, whatever, right? But nevertheless, since you hear them, so when do we say, right, you have to be inside the minyan? When it comes to the Amidah. When you're praying the Amidah, you have to be with them inside, or a line of vision, right? Or a line of vision, or physically inside. But when it comes to the issue of answering Kaddish and Kedusha and Baruch Hu, you don't have to be there. As long as you know that they're saying it now, or you hear it, right, that's good enough to answer, right? So a person has to know, right? There's all kinds of issues when it comes to the issue of minyan, right? There's also another issue. We're going to stop with this, right? I don't want to keep you guys all night. So the issue is like this, right? When, let's say a person, two different groups, right, are in a different room, whatever. So do they, let's say like 5 are over here and 5 are over there. Do they combine, right? So the truth is that not always do they combine in cases like this. So that's why, right, when you have like a limited amount of people in the minyan, they should all gather into one room. Don't scatter around, this one scattered over here, scattered over there. So what does that mean? That there should be at least 10 people inside the room. And then once you have 10 people, the people who have line of vision with them also do combine. But you need to have, right, that those 10 people inside the room. That's the idea, right? But if the truth is, right, if you have a line of vision also between this and that, right, you can still combine, even though you're technically in 2 different areas. So there is a way to combine like that too. So a person has to know, right, all these things. But going to a minyan rabotai is considered to be a very, very good thing you've said. The prayers are accepted much more readily when a person goes to minyan. Also, one more thing I want to tell you, right? They say, as we mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, the best way to pray shachrit, right, as we said, is to pray netzach hama, when the sun comes up. This is the best time. So the question is like this, right? The question is, if a person has a choice to pray by himself at netzach hama, or to go to minyan and pray later, which one is better, right? That's the question, right? This is the question. So the answer is Rabotai. We find in the book of Moreno Rabbeinu, Rav Ovadia, Rav Shalom, Yalkut Yosef, and other books, he writes over there that praying at sunrise is considered to be even better than going to minyan. Mm-hmm. Interesting, right? Interesting. What does that mean? He has no choice, right? Either that or either this or that, right? Here, Baruch Hashem, in this neighborhood, we have places that play in the nets. We have minyan like that here. In this area. We have here in Regal Park, we have also on Main Street, we have places like that. But there are places where they don't have minyan like that. So the question is, which one is better? They say to go to nets is better. You know why? Because saying Kriyat Shema, which is from the Torah, right? Kriyat Shema is from the Torah. So that's considered to be the most important part of the prayer. So if he's going to say that before the sun comes up, which is the really best time to say it, it's considered to be the most important thing. So therefore, since that's the number one issue when it comes to prayers, so if a person can pray B'netzach Hama by himself, it's better to pray by himself than to go to minyan and pray later. That's the idea. You know why? Because this is from the Torah, to say Kriyat Shema before the sun comes up. It's considered to be the best time to say Kriyat Shema. Right? So therefore, but they say there's one condition, right, when it comes to this. You know what the condition is? The condition is that when he says the Amidah, he's going to have some form of concentration, some form of, right, kavanah. Otherwise, if he doesn't know what he's saying, as we said, right, doesn't know what the prayers are saying. He doesn't know the translation. He doesn't know anything. So then he should always go to Minyan. Try to always go. You know why? Because when you pray alone and you don't know what you're saying, it's like your prayer is like, mishmash, there's nothing.
If you're reading and you're reading the wrong thing, you made a mistake while reading.
Yeah, what about that?
What about it? Is it considered, how does it work? So filter it out.
There are many rules about that. We have to discuss that at a different time. We don't have time to get into it now regarding what has to be done with mistakes. Bezat Hashem, since you brought it up, we'll do something on that.
I'm making plenty of mistakes.
Okay, so we're going to have to talk about that.
Okay.
By the way, you don't find out how much you don't know until you start to learn more. Then you start to realize how much you need to know, right? So the more you learn, the more you realize that you need to learn more. That's the idea. That's the way it is. Hashem should help us to learn more, Bezat Hashem, to learn the whole Torah Kula. B'mehera v'yaminu amen. Amen. Chazak v'baruch. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Do I have custom?